I never meant to find that room. If I'd just minded my own business like Father always insisted, maybe things would have turned out differently. But then again, maybe they were always meant to unravel this way. My name is Millie, and until last Tuesday, I thought I knew everything about our family sprawling mansion. Growing up here, I'd explored every corner, from the wine cellar to the attic. Or so I believed. I was looking for Mother's old art supplies in the East Wing when I noticed something odd about the wallpaper near Father's private study. A slight discoloration, barely visible unless you were right up close. I probably wouldn't have even spotted it if I hadn't been procrastinating on my college applications. Running my fingers along the seam, I felt a slight draft. The wall panel gave way under pressure, revealing a keypad hidden behind the wallpaper. I should have walked away. Instead, I punched in Father's birthday, the code he used for everything, despite my brother Henry's constant lectures about security. The panel slid open with a soft hiss. "What are you doing up here?" Henry's voice made me jump. He stood at the end of the hallway, his usually perfect hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. I gestured vaguely at the open panel. "Did you know about this?" Henry's face went pale. "Millie, close that right now. You can't be here." But I was already stepping inside. The room was small, maybe 12 by 15 feet, with steel filing cabinets lining the walls and a desk covered in documents. What caught my eye, though, was the gun rack mounted on the far wall. "These aren't hunting rifles," I whispered, recognizing the sleek shapes of weapons that had no business being in our home. Henry grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now. Wait." I pulled away, moving toward the desk. A folder lay open, revealing what looked like shipping manifests. The company name at the top, Thompson Global Solutions, was familiar, but the contents listed made no sense. "Since when does Father's company deal in military equipment?" "Millie, please." Henry's voice cracked. "Some things are better left alone." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Henry cursed under his breath and pulled me behind one of the cabinets just as Father's voice drifted in. "The wedding arrangements are proceeding as planned," Father was saying. "Once Millie's married to David Reed, Marcus's cooperation will be guaranteed." I felt the blood drain from my face. David Reed was Marcus's son, a man I'd met exactly once at a company gala last month. He was at least 15 years older than me and had spent the entire evening staring at me like I was a prize horse at auction. "And if she refuses?" It was Marcus's voice, smooth as oil. Father's laugh was cold. "She won't. Millie knows her duty to this family. Besides, she's still young enough to be guided." I must have made some small sound because Henry's hand clamped over my mouth. We stayed frozen as Father and Marcus continued their conversation, discussing business deals that sounded more and more like something out of a crime thriller. When their voices finally faded, Henry released me. I turned to face him, trembling. "How long have you known?" "Millie." He ran a hand through his hair again. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" I hissed. "Father's running some kind of illegal weapons operation and planning to marry me off like it's the 1800s. What's complicated about that?" Before Henry could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Mother. "Your father wants everyone dressed for dinner in an hour. He has an announcement to make." I looked at Henry, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in my brother's eyes. "You need to act normal," he whispered. "Like you never saw any of this. Promise me." But as we carefully closed the hidden room and headed downstairs, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't pretend anymore. Not when my entire future was about to be traded away like a business asset. I had to find a way out. The dinner announcement felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I sat at our massive dining table, pushing food around my plate while Father held court at the head, all smiles and charm. Mother perched beside him, her face a perfect mask of serenity that only slipped when she thought no one was looking. "David Reed will be joining us for dinner tomorrow night," Father announced, his voice carrying that tone that meant no discussion was welcome. "I expect everyone to make him feel welcome." I dropped my fork with a clatter. "I'm actually feeling quite ill. Maybe I should skip." "Nonsense." Father's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "You're 18 now, Millie. It's time he started taking an interest in the family business. Henry caught my eye from across the table, a silent warning in his expression. I forced myself to nod and mumble something agreeable. After dinner, I followed Mother to her studio. She was already mixing paints, her hands steady despite the slight tremor in her voice. "Your father means well, darling." "Does he?" I closed the door behind me. "Like he meant well when he drove away all your artist friends? When he made you stop exhibiting your work?" Mother's brush stilled on the canvas. "That's different. I chose this life." "Did you really choose, or did he just make all your other options disappear?" She turned to face me, and for the first time in years, I saw something crack in her carefully maintained composure. "There are things you don't understand about your father, about the way this world works." "Then help me understand." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I found his secret room today. The weapons, the documents." "Stop." Mother's paint-stained fingers gripped my wrist. "Some questions are dangerous to ask, Millie. Your father. He doesn't handle disloyalty well. What happened to Uncle James?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Uncle James, Father's younger brother, had disappeared 3 years ago. The official story was that he'd moved to Australia, but he'd never called, never written. Mother's face went ash-white. "Please, Millie, don't." A knock at the door made us both jump. Henry entered, his expression grim. "Father wants to see you in his study, Millie." "Now." My heart hammered as I climbed the stairs. The hidden room was just feet away from Father's study, its secrets burning in my mind. When I entered, Father was standing at the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Close the door," he said without turning around. I did, my fingers trembling slightly. "You remind me so much of your uncle sometimes," he said, and my blood ran cold. "Always questioning, always pushing boundaries." "I don't know what you mean." He turned then, fixing me with those steel-gray eyes that could strip away pretense like paint. "Henry tells me you've been asking about James." Mental note: never trust Henry with sensitive information again. "I just wondered why he never calls," I said carefully. "We were close." "Family is everything, Millie." Father set down his glass and approached me. "But family loyalty must be absolute." James forgot that. He started asking questions, making accusations. It became messy. The threat wasn't subtle. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I understand, Father." "Do you?" He touched my cheek, a gesture that once meant comfort but now felt like ownership. "Tomorrow night, you'll wear the blue dress your mother bought you. You'll smile, laugh at David's jokes, and show him what a perfect Thompson daughter you are. Because that's what family does. We play our parts." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Good girl." He kissed my forehead. "You may go." I managed to walk calmly until I reached my room. Then I collapsed against the door, my whole body shaking. Through the window, I could see Mother's studio light still burning, a lonely beacon in the darkness. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to the only person who might understand. "Henry, we need to talk." About Uncle James. The response came quickly. "Delete this message. Meet me at the old boathouse. Midnight." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Whatever happened to Uncle James, I had a feeling I was about to find out. And something told me it would change everything. The old boathouse creaked in the midnight wind, its weathered boards a stark contrast to our mansion's polished facade. I'd barely made it through the door when Henry grabbed my arm, pulling me into the shadows. "We're not alone," he whispered. Marcus Reed emerged from behind a stack of canoes, his expensive suit looking out of place among the cobwebs and dust. "Miss Thompson, how nice of you to join us." My stomach dropped. "What's he doing here?" "Your brother and I have been having some interesting conversations," Marcus said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "About your father's business practices. About Uncle James." I turned to Henry, betrayal burning in my throat. "You told him?" "He needed to know," Henry said. "Show her." Marcus pulled out his phone, playing a video that made my blood run cold. It showed Uncle James arguing with Father in his study. The timestamp was from 3 years ago, the night before he moved to Australia. Your uncle discovered certain irregularities in the company books, Marcus explained. Weapons being sold to some very unsavory people. He threatened to expose everything. The video ended with father making a phone call. Take care of it. That's not. I couldn't finish the sentence. Not what? Henry's voice was bitter. Not like our father? Wake up, Millie. James isn't in Australia. He's buried somewhere in the woods behind the country club. My legs gave out, and I sank onto an overturned bucket. Why are you showing me this now? Because history's about to repeat itself, Marcus said. Your father's planning something big. Something that would make the weapons dealing look like a parking ticket. And he's using your marriage to David to secure my loyalty. I won't do it, I said. I'll run away. Like Catherine did? Henry asked quietly. The name hit me like a slap. Catherine, my cousin who'd disappeared 10 years ago. Another family mystery I'd been too young to question. How many? I whispered. How many people has he? Too many, Marcus said. But we can stop him. With your help. I looked between them, these men plotting in shadows. Why should I trust either of you? Because I can get you out, Marcus said. New identity, new life, far from here. But first, we need evidence. The kind that's in that room you found. My heart raced. You want me to steal from Father's secret room? We want you to save yourself, Henry said. And maybe Mother too, before it's too late. A noise outside made us all freeze. Footsteps on the dock. Tomorrow night, Marcus whispered urgently. During the dinner with David. The study will be empty. It's your only chance. We scattered like shadows, leaving through different exits. I made it back to my room just as Father's security detail passed beneath my window. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, Uncle James's face haunting me. Had he felt this same terror in his final hours? Had Catherine? My phone buzzed at dawn. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at the coffee shop on Grove Street. 7 a.m. Come alone. J. I almost deleted it, but something made me hesitate. The initial, J, could have been coincidence, but the timing was too perfect. I got dressed quickly, my mind racing. If I was going to survive this, I needed more allies. More information. The weapons in Father's room weren't just for show. They were a promise of what happened to people who crossed him. As I slipped out of the house, I caught sight of Mother in her studio, already painting. But this time, I noticed what she was working on, a landscape of the country club grounds, with dark shapes hidden among the trees. She'd known. All this time, she'd been painting her grief, her guilt, her secrets. I couldn't end up like her, trapped in a gilded cage with blood-stained memories. I couldn't become another family mystery, whispered about but never discussed. The coffee shop was 3 blocks away. Each step felt like a choice between life and death, trust and betrayal, action and paralysis. Whatever waited for me there, whoever Jay was, had to be better than the fate Father had planned for me. Because now I understood, in our family, marriage wasn't an arrangement. It was a sentence. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. A man sat in the corner booth, his face hidden behind a newspaper. As I approached, he lowered it slowly, and my world tilted sideways. Uncle James? He looked different, thinner, grayer, with a scar running along his jawline. But those eyes were unmistakable. Thompson eyes. Sit down, Millie, he said quietly. We don't have much time. My hands shook as I slid into the booth. You're supposed to be dead. I was supposed to be a lot of things. He pushed a manila envelope across the table. Your father's men will be here in 10 minutes. Security noticed you leaving the house. I grabbed the envelope. How are you even alive? I saw the video. Marcus showed you exactly what Richard wanted everyone to see. James glanced at his watch. The real video shows your father ordering my execution. But Marcus had other plans. He helped me disappear, kept me informed. Now I'm returning the favor. The pieces clicked together. Marcus isn't really helping Henry and me, is he? Marcus helps Marcus. He's playing both sides, waiting to see which horse will win the race. James leaned forward. But you're different. You have a chance to get out like I did. Everything you need is in that envelope. New identity, accounts, contacts. Use it tonight, during the dinner party. My throat tightened. What about mother? Henry. Henry made his choice when he aligned with Marcus. Your mother. James's expression softened. Eleanor knows more than she lets on. She's stronger than you think. A black SUV rolled past the window. James tensed. One more thing, he said, sliding a key across the table. Storage Unit 247, Central Storage. What's inside might help you understand why your father is so desperate to keep control of the family. But be careful. Knowledge is dangerous in our world. He stood, adjusting his cap. Good luck, Millie. You're braver than I was at your age. I watched him disappear through the back door just as two of Father's security men entered through the front. I slipped the envelope into my bag and pretended to study the menu. Back home, I found Mother in the garden, pruning roses with mechanical precision. Her hands were bleeding, but she didn't seem to notice. The blue roses are dying, she said without looking up. Your father's favorite. I touched her shoulder. Mother, I know where you went this morning. She finally met my eyes. James was always good at hiding. Like Catherine. My heart stopped. Catherine's alive? Mother smiled sadly. The Thompson women survive, Millie. We adapt. She pressed something cold into my palm, a locket. Whatever you decide to do tonight, remember that. I opened my mouth to respond, but Father's voice cut through the garden. There's my girls. He approached with Marcus and David Reed in tow. David's eyes crawled over me like insects. Doesn't Millie look lovely today? Father said, his hand heavy on my shoulder. David was just saying how much he's looking forward to dinner tonight. I forced a smile, feeling the locket burn against my palm. Can't wait. Later, in my room, I opened the envelope. Inside were documents, cash, and a note. The truth about Catherine is in the storage unit. She's waiting for you in Montreal. Jay. My phone buzzed. Henry, whatever you're planning, don't trust Marcus. He showed Father the coffee shop footage. Another buzz. Unknown number. Storage unit compromised. Don't go there. Meet me at the old church instead. 8 p.m. Jay. But something felt wrong. The handwriting in the second note was different from James's first one. A trap? I looked out my window at the gathering storm clouds. In 6 hours, dinner would begin. In 6 hours, I'd either be free or follow in Uncle James's footsteps, running, hiding, surviving. Or worse, I'd end up like the others who had crossed Father. I opened the locket Mother gave me. Inside wasn't a photo, but a tiny key. On its head was engraved, 247. Mother's words echoed in my mind. The Thompson women survive. Time to prove her right. The storage unit key felt like it was burning a hole in my evening clutch as I sat through the most excruciating dinner of my life. David Reed's hand kept finding its way to my knee under the table, while Father watched with approving eyes. Mother hadn't come down. A migraine, she'd claimed. But I'd seen the packed overnight bag hidden under her bed. I was thinking a spring wedding, David announced, his fingers digging into my leg. April, perhaps? I shifted away, accidentally catching Henry's eye across the table. His face was a mask, but his knuckles were white around his wine glass. Wonderful idea, Father beamed. Millie, darling, why don't you show David the garden? The roses are lovely in the moonlight. It wasn't a suggestion. I stood, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. Of course. The moment we stepped outside, David's charm evaporated. He grabbed my arm, spinning me to face him. Let's be clear about something. I know you're planning something stupid. Marcus told me about your little coffee shop meeting. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Uncle James? He laughed coldly. Did you really think he'd risk everything to save you? He's dead, sweetheart. Has been for years. Marcus played you, and now you're going to play your part like a good little wife, or Daddy Dearest finds out everything. A shadow moved near the roses. Mother stood there, pruning shears in hand, watching us with an expression I'd never seen before. David, she called softly. I believe Richard wanted to discuss business details with you. He released me, straightening his jacket. We'll continue this conversation later, dear. The moment he disappeared inside, Mother pressed something into my hand, car keys. Storage Unit 247, she whispered. Go now. I'll keep them distracted. But now, Millie. I ran. The storage facility was only 10 minutes away, but every shadow looked like Father's security detail. Every car behind me could have been Marcus or David. Unit 247 was at the back of the complex. The key worked, but the door stuck. I heaved it up, and the smell hit me first, musty papers and old leather. Inside was a lifetime of secrets. Filing cabinets lined one wall, each drawer labeled with a year. On a desk sat a laptop and a stack of USB drives. But what caught my eye was the corkboard covered in photos, Father with men I'd seen in news reports about organized crime, weapon shipments, money transfers. And in the center, a photo of Catherine. She was older than in my memories, the timestamp showing it was taken just last year. She was alive. My phone buzzed. Henry, Father knows you're gone. Get out now. I grabbed the laptop and drives, shoving them into my bag. As I reached for Catherine's photo, headlights swept across the storage unit's entrance. Millie? A man's voice, one I didn't recognize. I'm Jake. Your mother sent me. We need to move. I peered around the door. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with kind eyes that didn't match the gun holstered under his jacket. How do I know you're telling the truth? He held up his phone, showing a text from Mother's private number, the Thompson women survive. Another set of headlights appeared at the entrance to the storage facility. Choose now, Jake said quietly. But choose fast. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Trust Jake. He was Catherine's way out. Now he's yours. Love, Mom. The approaching headlights belonged to a black SUV, Father's security detail. I looked at Jake, then at the evidence in my bag. Everything I needed to destroy Father's empire or save myself. I couldn't do both. Which way to Montreal? I asked. Jake smiled, extending his hand. Let me show you. Behind us, voices shouted. Orders were given. But as we slipped into the shadows, I finally understood what Mother meant. Survival wasn't about running away. It was about choosing when to fight back. 3 days into our escape, Jake's car broke down outside Montreal. We were huddled in a dingy motel room, watching snow fall through a cracked window when my phone lit up with a video call from Henry. My brother's face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. They know everything, Millie. Jake moved closer, his hand steady on my shoulder. Who did this to you? Marcus. Henry's laugh was bitter. Turns out he's been playing both sides longer than we thought. He has Uncle James. The room tilted sideways. James is alive? Barely. Father's keeping him in the basement of the country club. But that's not, Henry glanced over his shoulder. Mother's missing. After she helped you escape, she went to her studio and never came out. There was blood on her roses. The phone slipped from my fingers. Jake caught it, continuing the conversation while I stumbled to the bathroom. The face in the mirror looked like a stranger, dark circles under my eyes, hair tangled from days of running. Your father's men are an hour behind us, Jake said from the doorway. We need to move. I gripped the sink. We have to go back. That's suicide. They have my family. The mirror cracked under my fist, blood welling up between my knuckles. Mother, James, Henry, they're all suffering because I ran. Jake pulled out his gun, checking the magazine. There's something you need to know. I worked for your father before I helped Catherine escape. I was his cleaner. The word hung between us like poison. Did you? I couldn't finish the question. No, but I helped hide the bodies of those who crossed him. That's why I got out, helped Catherine get out. And now they're using that against me. He showed me his phone, photos of Catherine, clearly recent, clearly captive. Marcus sent these an hour ago. Everything clicked into place. You didn't help me because Mother asked. You needed the evidence in that storage unit to save Catherine. His silence was answer enough. I opened my bag, pulling out the laptop and drives. Then let's use it. All of it. Take down Father, Marcus, everyone. They'll kill them all the moment we try. Not if we're smart. I powered up the laptop, fingers flying over the keys. Father always said knowledge is power. Let's see what secrets he's been keeping. The files were encrypted, but I recognized the pattern, the same code father used for everything. His arrogance would be his downfall. A message popped up on my phone, final warning. Come home now or mother joins Uncle James. You have 1 hour. David. Attached was a photo of mother's studio, her easel smashed, blood on the flowers. I can't lose anyone else, I whispered. Jake checked his gun again. Sometimes the only way to save everyone is to risk everything. Or lose everything. He touched my cheek, turning my face toward his. Your father took everything from me once. I won't let him do it again. The laptop chimed, files decrypted. What I saw made my blood run cold. Weapon sales were just the beginning. Human trafficking, political assassinations, evidence of murders stretching back decades. Including proof that Catherine wasn't father's first victim, just the first to survive. Another message buzzed through. TikTok. Daddy's getting impatient. David. I looked at Jake, at the evidence that could destroy my father's empire, at the proof that could save lives, but might cost me everyone I loved. We can run, Jake offered quietly. Start new lives. Let it all burn behind us. But mother's words echoed in my head. The Thompson women survive. No, I said, closing the laptop. We're going back. But not to surrender. They'll be expecting that. I pulled mother's locket from my pocket, studying the key that had started everything. Exactly. They're expecting a scared little girl running home to daddy. Instead, they're going to get what father always feared most. What's that? I smiled, and for the first time, I saw my father's steel in my own reflection. A Thompson who's not afraid of him anymore. The snow kept falling outside our window, covering our tracks, burying the past. By morning, it would be time to face the future, whatever the cost. The country club's basement smelled like copper and fear. Jake and I moved silently through the darkness, guided by the blueprints Henry had sent. Somewhere above us, father was hosting his annual charity gala, the perfect cover for what was about to happen. We found Uncle James first, handcuffed to a pipe. His face was bloody, but his eyes lit up when he saw us. Should have known Eleanor's daughter wouldn't run forever. Mother, I whispered, working on his restraints. Storage room down the hall. Marcus has been keeping her separate from me. Smart man. She nearly took his eye out with her paintbrush. Jake handed James a gun. Catherine? Top floor. Richard's office. He's keeping her close tonight. Footsteps echoed above us. The gala was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking to the sound of blood money changing hands. You remember the plan? I asked James. He nodded, checking the gun. Create a distraction in the main hall. Get the police here. Keep them busy while you handle Richard. And Marcus? James's smile was cold. Leave Marcus to me. He and I have unfinished business. We split up. Jake and I found Mother exactly where James said. She was already free, picking the lock with a broken easel wire. When she saw us, she pressed a finger to her lips and pointed upward. Marcus's voice drifted down from the stairwell. Richard wants them alive, he was saying. Especially the girl. He has plans for her. Mother's eyes met mine. In them, I saw 18 years of carefully contained rage. She mouthed one word. Go. Jake squeezed my hand before melting into the shadows, heading for the security room. Everything was in place. Now came the hard part. I climbed the stairs alone, father's encrypted files burning a hole in my pocket. The hallway to his office stretched before me like a gauntlet. Inside, I could hear him talking. Your cousin never did learn, he was saying. But you will, won't you, Catherine? I pushed open the door. Father sat behind his desk, looking exactly as he had at dinner 4 days ago. Catherine stood by the window, older but unmistakable, a bruise darkening her cheek. Hello, Father. He didn't seem surprised to see me. I knew you'd come home eventually. Thompson blood always tells. That's what Mother says. I moved closer, noting the gun on his desk. Though I don't think she meant it quite the same way you do. Where's the evidence, Millie? Safe. Unless anything happens to my family, any of them. His laugh was genuine. You think you can blackmail me? I taught you everything you know. Not everything. I pulled out my phone, showing him the live feed Jake had set up. Right now, every screen in the main hall is showing your secret files. The weapons deals. The murders. Everything. For the first time, Father's composure cracked. Below us, chaos erupted as his carefully curated world began to crumble. You're bluffing. Mother taught me to paint, Father. But you taught me how to destroy things. He reached for the gun, but Catherine was faster. She grabbed his wrist, slamming it against the desk. I dove for the weapon as it skittered across the floor. When I stood, Father was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You're just like him, he whispered. Like James. Weak. Sentimental. No, I said, keeping the gun steady. I'm just like you. I learned to take what I want. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Through the window, I could see guests fleeing, Marcus being tackled by James, Mother emerging from the basement like an avenging angel. What do you want? Father asked quietly. I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything. To watch your world burn and know you can't stop it. I stepped back toward the door. I want you to live with it like we all had to. His face contorted with rage as he lunged forward, but Catherine's punch dropped him cold. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. Ready to get out of here, cousin? I nodded, hearing Jake's footsteps in the hall, knowing Mother and James were safe below. The Thompson women survive, I said, watching Father's empire collapse around him. And for the first time in my life, those words felt like a promise instead of a curse. 6 months after Father's arrest, I stood in Mother's new studio in Montreal, watching her paint the sunrise. Her hands were steady now, no longer trembling under the weight of secrets. The canvas bloomed with colors she'd never dared use in the mansion: fierce reds, defiant purples, free-flowing blues. Henry called, she said, adding a streak of gold to the horizon. The trial date is set. I nodded, fingering the locket that had started everything. Will you testify? We all will. She set down her brush, studying her work. Even Catherine. Catherine had disappeared again after that night, but differently this time, on her own terms, with a promise to return. She sent postcards from places Father had forbidden us to visit, each one signed with a simple, "The Thompson women survive." Uncle James appeared in the doorway, his scars fading, but still visible. Jake's here with the files from the safe deposit box. My heart jumped at Jake's name, even now. He entered carrying a familiar stack of documents, but his eyes were only for me. We'd grown closer over these months, building something careful and real from the ashes of our shared trauma. You need to see this, he said, laying out the papers. Your mother's been busy for years. The documents told a story I'd never suspected. Mother hadn't just been painting all those years, she'd been documenting. Every transaction, every crime, every victim. Her artwork contained hidden messages, dates, locations. She'd built a case against Father piece by piece, painting by painting. I couldn't save James when Richard tried to kill him, Mother said quietly. But I could make sure his crimes wouldn't stay buried forever. The paintings in your studio, I realized. The ones Father never let anyone see. Evidence, she confirmed. All of it. I knew someday one of us would be strong enough to use it. James squeezed her shoulder. You were always the strong one, Eleanor. We just didn't see it. A text lit up my phone. Henry. David Reed rolled on Father. Marcus too. It's really over. But was it? Father still haunted my dreams sometimes, his voice whispering about Thompson blood and family loyalty. In quiet moments, I caught myself checking over my shoulder, planning escape routes. You're not him, Jake said softly, reading my thoughts like he always could. You never were. I opened the locket, looking at the key that had unlocked so much more than just a storage unit. No, I'm not. I'm my mother's daughter. Mother smiled, turning back to her canvas. The sunrise she'd painted wasn't just breaking, it was shattering the darkness, sending shards of night scattering like a broken mirror. I got another postcard from Catherine, I said. She's in Paris. Says we should join her. Will you go? James asked. I looked around the studio, at Mother finally creating freely, at Jake's steady presence beside me, at the family we'd pieced together from broken parts. Not yet, I decided. First, we have a trial to finish, a story to tell. And after, Jake's hand found mine. After, we live. Not just survive, live. Mother added one final stroke to her painting, a small figure standing in the breaking dawn, face turned toward the light. Looking closer, I realized it wasn't one figure, but many, their shadows intertwined, holding each other up. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number, but I knew who it was. Found something you should see. Another family secret, but this one's different. When you're ready. See. I smiled, tucking the phone away. Some mysteries could wait. Some secrets were better unveiled slowly, in their own time. Outside, snow was falling, Montreal's endless winter finally giving way to spring. Soon, Father would face justice. Soon, our testimony would ensure he never hurt another family again. But for now, I was content to watch Mother paint, to feel Jake's hand in mine, to know that Uncle James was safe and Catherine was free. To understand finally that revenge hadn't healed us. Truth had. The Thompson women survived. But more than that, we learned to live. And that was the greatest victory of all.